Welcome to Part 2 of the Law of Mystara series. In Part 1 we covered the creation of the multiverse. In this part, we shall cover events of unknown dates that occurred before recorded history. In Part 1, we also covered how the world of Mystara is actually a megalith called Urt. Urt agreed to a request from the immortals to host life forms, materials and elements. Urt is currently halfway through an active phase, i.e. it has been active for 5,000 to 500,000 years. Unusually, Urt is a hollow megalith. To create gravity, the Old Ones added a world shield, a thin layer of magical molten rock 600 miles into the world's crust. The Immortals then completely covered Mystara's surface in water. Arguments between the Immortals of how the world should be shaped led to great elemental upheavals that formed the continents. The Immortals eventually ceased their war, commencing the time of truce. Over billions of years, life forms evolved, or were created on Mystara. Possibly the first sentient creature on Mystara was the Gakarak. In the magical forest of Proto-Evergreen, some trees awaken as the first treants. Chaos reigned throughout the multiverse. Entropy dominated. Entropy was comprised of the spheres of matter, energy, time and thought. However, some immortals had been creating various life forms. Representing life and order was the sphere of integration. Life was a threat to the chaotic status quo. As with life, order was sure to follow. Order would replace chaos and unseat entropy as the dominant force in the multiverse. Eventually, some immortals of minority lawful and neutral alignments rebelled against the chaotic immortals. The conflict spanned the multiverse and ended with victory to the rebels. The victors remained immortals in the spheres of matter, energy, time and thought, whilst the vanquished remained, or were relegated to, the sphere of entropy. However, the immortals who did not participate in the war were also punished. They were stripped of their immortality and their spirits were dispersed to the prime plane. They became the good people or fairies as they are more commonly known. Neither mortal nor immortal, they are reincarnated every 1,000 years or less. They wait for the circle of the multiverse to turn once again, when chaos reigns and they will regain their immortality. Some good people are placed in the forests of Mystara, in particular Proto-Evergreen in the south. A Proto-Evergreen treant, Ordana, achieves immortality on the path of the dynast. Sharkkin exist in the oceans and seas. Later, they leave the oceans and seas and adapt to living on land. Dinosaurs evolve. Life on Mystara is dominated by megafauna. Ka, an Allosaurus-like dinosaur, was freakily hatched with sentience, magical ability and longevity. Ka's intellect assisted his survival and made him unbeatable in this savage world. After many centuries, Ka developed self-awareness. He set about trying to discover why he was different to the other creatures. These activities led him to discover and learn magic. Ka polymorphed himself into many different creatures to gain insight into their perspective. He codified and systemized his magical studies through memory management techniques. These memory techniques assisted immortals cope with their own immortality. After nearly 1,000 years after he hatched, Ka stumbled upon the path of the polymath. Ka's intellectual pursuits and polymorphing drew the attention of Terra, who sponsored him. Upon attaining immortality, Ka began exploring Mystara to increase his understanding of it, especially its life forms. Ka was excited with each new species he discovered. If he became aware of a species nearing extinction, he would move them to a secluded valley so they could recover. Ka's actions led to his fellow immortals dubbing him the Preserver. A meteor the size of an island hit Mystara, causing a crater and fissures in the earth. After spending millennia saving species, Ka explored the crater and found numerous fissures into the earth. Descending into one of these fissures, Ka found a network of tunnels and caves hundreds of miles deep. After a few hundred miles, he reached a magical belt of matter that stretched several miles deep. This was the World Shield. Ka discovered that it created the world's gravity and prevented scrying of the inner world with powerful anti-magic. Ka continued to descend, eventually discovering the dark and hollow interior of the earth. After years of contemplation, Ka decided to use the inner world as a refuge for endangered cultures and species. Ka, with the assistance of Ixion, Ordana, and Karotiku, creates the hollow world over many millennia. Most of the first species placed in the hollow world from the outer world were megafauna facing extinction. Ka creates the lizard men, placing some in Malfegi swamp. Prehistoric sentient primitive porpoises evolved. However, eventually the offspring of these creatures had only animal intelligence. The last and most intelligent of the species was Proteus. Somehow, Proteus was able to learn magic, much as a Woken does, without spellbooks. He mastered time magic and traveled forward in time to the Stone Age era, where he caught the attention of the time-traveling immortal Coronis. Coronis then sponsored Proteus on the path of the dynast. Once immortal, Coronis sent Proteus back to his own time. A spellcaster magically transformed a goat into a sentient goat-like humanoid to act as a servant and called him Faunus. Faunus was very long-lived and developed greater intelligence. His offspring became the Fauns. Eventually, he stumbled on the path of the polymath and achieved immortality under Terra's sponsorship. Terra creates the Eldar, intelligent, tall, ethereal beings with piercing eyes. The Eldar develop into powerful wizards and build great kingdoms. However, Eldar wizards became so powerful that at one stage they transform into prehistoric dragons. At this juncture, the immortal Ordana transforms most of the less powerful Eldar into elves and places them in Proto-Evergreen. Some Eldar are transformed into drakes by Terra, whilst a small core remain Eldar. The Wallara are created by the Great One, an ancestor of the current Great One, in the Wallaroo grasslands of the northern Orcs Head Peninsula. The current Great One as of AC 1000, a prehistoric three-headed dragon, hatches and eventually achieves immortality as one of the dragon rulers. The previous Great One dies. War rages in the Draconic Cluster for a century before the current Great One emerges as the new ruler of all dragons after a ceremony held near the dimensional vortex. Ixion impregnates Nephili, a being of the element of air. Nephili gives birth to Centaurus, the first centaur. That concludes part 2 of our Mystara lore series. Next we will look at the later millennia of the prehistoric era.